Can people change? There's no simple answer. I can organize my thoughts and say something semi-intelligent about what I see around me and how I feel, but that's just my humble little voice. It is more useful to examine what the great ones had to say about this. Again, no simple answers. I'm beginning to think that we are better off if we lean back and contemplate the fascinating complexity of life with a smile on our face. When I drive to work, I go through about a dozen traffic lights, and typically I get 3 red lights, maybe just 2. If anything interferes with the normal rhythm of the traffic, maybe I get 6 red lights. Now I will notice this and grumble about it because it slows me down and it's annoying. Imagine that I get 10 red lights. Whoa, now this would be newsworthy. I would tell my wife about the catastrophe of the red lights. Human perception is biased. We notice irregularities and dramatic events because they stand out from the multitude of ordinary things that we like to take for granted. We're wired to be more sensitive to threat and pain, and to make matters worse, our tendency to overweight negative information is nowadays further complicated by the media. Pap Finn, Huckleberry Finn's father, is a notorious and abusive drunkard who successfully manipulates a naive and religious judge and his family. They take him in and clean him up. And after supper he talked to him about temperance and such things, till the old man cried and said he'd been a fool and fooled away his life, but now he was going to turn over a new leaf and be a man nobody wouldn't be ashamed of. And he hoped the judge would help him and not look down on him. The judge said he could hug him for them words. So he cried, and his wife, she cried again. Pap said he'd been a man that had been always misunderstood before, and the judge said he'd believe it. So Pap's performance is flawless. It's theatrics. He goes through a well-rehearsed script. He delivers absolutely everything they want to hear. The old man said that what a man wanted that was down was sympathy, and the judge said it was so. So they cried again. And when it was bedtime, the old man rose up and held out his hand and says, "Look at it, gentlemen and ladies all. Take a hold of it, shake it. There's a hand that was the hand of a hog. But it ain't so no more. It's the hand of a man that started in on a new life and'll die before he'll go back. You mark them words. Don't forget I said them. It's a clean hand now. Shake it. Don't be afeared." So they shook it one after the other, all around, and cried. The judge's wife, she kissed it. Then the old man, he signed a pledge, made his mark. The judge said it was the holiest time on record, or something like that. And of course we all know what happens to Pap later that evening. He gets pissed drunk and goes back to his old self. Even modern classics like Trailer Park Boys confirm that leopards can't change their spots.
What's the problem this time, boys?
Captain Shitacular is raising shit in Sunnyvale again.
And when he called us and said, "This is what is happening, you have to come out here and help," I have no choice. I would say that Ricky's a shit leopard that can't change his spots.
Look, please.
There are many people who just go down, 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 and then they hit rock bottom and then they're finished. But my friend, the ultralight pilot, is a shining example for the exact opposite. He became a drug runner in South America and spent jail time in the US for it. He got scared straight, turned his life around, became a committed Baptist, and successfully reintegrated himself into mainstream society. He was a fantastic friend. His destiny was to fly, and his fate was to die in a plane crash. Now, the really important things about people are hard to measure and quantify. There's no good data to rely on. I'm just guessing that there are fewer miraculous recoveries than cases of people who steadily march towards their doom. Just look at the delusions and the excuses Dr. Now's 600-pound people come up with.
You have been given a tool to help you change your life. Now that you had the surgery, the physical drive to eat is gone. So you have to deal with what is driving you to eat. That's the hard part, and you don't want to do it. And you're running from it and self-destructing.
I'm done with this conversation. Go to her.
Now, this is a TV reality show. What is the real reality? Is there any hope for the hopeless cases? Christianity is very serious about the transformative power of faith. The idea is that when a person surrenders his or her life to Christ, the Holy Spirit moves in and the person is born again. Particularly evangelical Christians go out of their way to facilitate a spiritual rebirth. Are their prayers and staged faith experiences useless? Jesus saves, but his success rate is hard to measure. Conforming with the expectations of a religious community is a trade-off, but it may be a good deal for somebody who otherwise would be a pap Finn. I don't need Jehovah's Witnesses to save me and turn me into a Jehovah's Witness, but as they knock on doors, they might find desperate people. We'd better not judge. Take a look at this.
What do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
I'd say more like 1 out of a million.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
Lloyd is not assessing his situation correctly, but this is precisely how most of us think as we cling to hope. Now, here's another example. East Germany wasn't a cheerful place. I saw how bleak life was there. As many as 2 million people were Stasi informants, and there was no escape. It was a soul-crushing place, so I was supposed to see a lot of crushed souls. Why is it then that the East Germans did not lose their will to live? Hope is a life-sustaining force. There's simply no better alternative to holding out against all odds and trying our best again and again. Schopenhauer, the philosopher of pessimism, said that the best we can hope for in life is to reduce our suffering. You read Schopenhauer and nod and murmur, yeah, that's true, good point, that makes sense. But then you back away from it and say, but I choose to be hopeful and optimistic, even if it doesn't make sense. Optimism, even from a purely practical point of view, is generally better for people than pessimism. So what do the great ones have to say about fate and destiny? In Julius Caesar, Shakespeare says, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." He adopts Aristotle's theory of hamartia, a character flaw or error in judgment that leads to the downfall of the tragic hero. On the other hand, Romeo and Juliet actually have very little control over their own lives. Does Shakespeare believe in fate or free will? The answer is probably both. Nobody will ever get to the bottom of this debate. The only thing I can say is this: Right now, I'm living a life that's comfortably my own. I made a huge effort to shape my life to become like this. But can I also say that I was destined to turn out like this? My wonderful life could have ended tragically many times. Was I simply lucky? Each time I got a new lease on life, I felt tremendously energized to stay the course and continue my mission and be a good guy. My high school friend wasn't very strong academically. His parents' divorce held him back big time. He started his work life as low as it gets, taking dead bodies down to the hospital morgue and mopping up the blood splatter in operating rooms. Imagine the hectic moment when a trauma surgeon gives up the fight for somebody's life, runs to another operating room, and jokingly calls out to the cleaning guy, "Hey, could you close this one up?" And my friend, the cleaning guy, did it. And as he sutured up the cut into a nice zipper, something inside him clicked. I can do this. And whatever was dormant in him now started to wake up. With a superhuman effort and focus, he climbed spectacularly. When I saw him 30 years later, he had 3 medical diplomas. He was a living legend in his field, a trauma surgeon, a microsurgeon, and an internist. He pioneered new techniques in limb reattachment surgeries, and every year he went to India for a month to help the poor people with operations that otherwise they would have no chance for. This was his destiny, wasn't it? We did not see it in him back then. My daughter works for an agency that helps the PAP Finns, not for born-again religious reasons, just to minimize their rate of reincarceration. They hit rock bottom and have a lot to lose, so they have external pressure on them to take the behavior modification therapy they receive very seriously. If this sinks in, they can do it. They may not become model citizens or perfect human beings every which way, but they are much less likely to reoffend or kill themselves with various addictions. Now, this is measurable. We can't change people. They can change themselves. People change probably more often than we think, except when it's not spectacular, it is not newsworthy.